Hel- Hello and welcome to Creator Weekly Live. This is the last episode for 2024. I can't even believe it. Today, I want to talk about a few trends I've seen over the past year going into 2025. So that will be the bulk of today's show. But first, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who has been watching. I appreciate you so much joining me here live. Thank you to everyone who read my newsletter. Thank you to everyone who read my blog posts and commented. I really appreciate that. And just a quick shout out. First of all, if I missed your name, I apologize. I want to give a special shout out to Craig and Jolyn and Andrew, who have been my stalwarts here live. Thank you so much for joining me and having a great chat. It makes me feel like I'm not just shouting out into the ether here. And thanks to folks who also commented on my blog posts. I really, really do appreciate that. So, and for my newsletter readers, there's a group of 25 subscribers to my weekly newsletter, link in description, that have read on average 92% of all of the editions I emailed this year every week. So that's like, they looked at like 50 emails. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate it. I can't give names because I just have email addresses, but you know who you are. All right. So let me switch here. So here we are. It's the end of the year. There's not any new updates this week. Not surprisingly, all the tech companies have holidays too, except for the people that keep things running. I appreciate you guys also. But I wanted to talk about a few trends I've been seeing in 2024. I think they're going to go right into 2025. Of course, we may get some surprises. That's the nature of things. But I think these things are going to happen. And I'd love to hear what you guys think. Do you think these are going to be important trends? Do you see other things happening in 2025? So I want to start by talking about generative AI. Now, it's an obvious trend. All the big companies are putting generative AI tools everywhere. I mean, Google's announcing new generative AI things in YouTube and Google Workspace, and Microsoft has Copilot in all its products, and all of the different image editors and video editors. Everybody has some AI something. But I think one of the big trends that we're seeing is that the cost of this is finally catching up. And while you can at least try a lot of these generative AI tools, a lot of times that's really limited. Like Adobe Firefly, you have a limited number of credits you can use, for example. And all of these companies are justifying raising their subscription fees for more like professional accounts. They're saying, oh, we have all these great features that justifies the price increase. So this is what we're seeing. And it's not just a money grab. My understanding is that these generative AI tools are actually very expensive to run. You have companies like Google and Amazon and Microsoft talking about building nuclear power plants to make sure there's enough electricity. And I read an article in the past few days talking about how these AI tools are sucking up so much electricity. It's causing fluctuations in the US power grid. This is crazy, right? And of course, it's not just electricity, it takes a lot of processing power. And it's not clear how many of these large language models in particular are going to actually get significantly better without consuming so many resources, it's not even worth it. So to add these generative AI tools, they have to pass the cost on. And as a creator, if you use these tools, you're going to have to decide which of these platforms, which of these tools is most important to use. And a big one that's been talked about a lot is CapCut. This is owned by ByteDance. It's the same parent company as TikTok. And I used it a lot, again, for some AI tools, mainly for removing backgrounds and generating captions automatically. And they just put a bunch of these tools behind a pro subscription. Now, it's not unreasonable that they ask people to pay for these things. Stuff can't be free forever. I think what's bad about the way CapCut did it is that they offered these things for free. It was apparently some kind of trial period, but they never actually told anyone it was a trial period. They just let people use them for a while, and all of a sudden, people go to export their projects, and they say, "Oh, you can't do it because you use something that's requires a pro subscription." It's been pretty rotten. And if you go on Reddit, in the CapCut subreddit, people are really pissed off there. So again, coming to terms with this, I think we're going to actually see more of this. Big companies like Google can offer a bunch of tools for free, at least as a sampler. But, you're looking even at Google. To have access to all of the free tools, you need a Google One subscription with the generative AI add-on, which is another additional $10 a month. So this adds up. And unless you've got lots of money flowing, you're going to have to pick and choose which tools you want to use. And, there are other costs. About using AI. I mentioned the fact that it requires using massive amounts of electricity and processor power. But I think there are other costs that we're not talking about. Part of the cost is that it's so easy for people to churn out tons and tons of images and text and even like books on Amazon. They don't care about the quality. They just want to maximize what they do. And people who actually spend time writing, doing journalism, creating art, creating videos are competing with this. And in addition to having all this AI slop competing, these AI companies are still basically scooping up anything that's publicly visible to train the next model. And it feels like this is not sustainable. Part of what we see happening is that more things are going behind a subscription wall. Sometimes it's even free, but you have to log in to see the content. And that's not great for readers and viewers. But again, I think we're seeing this trend where people are reluctant to put things out on the internet for free because these companies will scoop it up and then they use it to make products that say, oh, you don't have to pay artists anymore. You don't have to pay writers. Just use our product that we spent training on all this hard work from writers and artists. So Andrew has a good point here. Andrew says, I actually think the pushback against generative AI will help push more research and interest into extractive AI. So I think that's interesting because it's hard to know what's happening inside these companies and what they're planning to do, but it seems like the large language models have hit a plateau, and some of the really neat things that Google has been releasing, for example, the Notebook LM, and there's another research tool that I can't remember the name of it that they're working on, where the idea is you're not just generating text and images, you are instead basing the output on specific documents and references. This is much less likely to generate just completely wrong things as well. So we shall see how it goes in 2025. But I feel like the current sort of race to plug in generative AI here, that's not sustainable. Say hello to Eileen, who says she's watching on TV with the old Chromecast. That is another trend that I'll get to. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting this year, and maybe if you're not middle-aged like I am, you won't find it as interesting. But The Verge did a whole really nicely done package of articles talking about all the things that launched in 2004, 20 years ago. That's like a whole generation ago. That's the year Gmail launched, Firefox launched, Facebook launched that year. YouTube would launch the next year, and back in 2004, blogging was the big thing, and there were bloggers everywhere. It was really this vibe where everything was new and exciting, and The Verge called it the first year of the future. The question is, here we are 20 years later. Obviously, the big thing that we're seeing now is these generative AI tools, but will we look back as fondly 20 years from now, or will we look back and say, what were we doing? It's just so cringe, you know? I think it will be interesting to see. And one of the things that's really notable is that back in 2004, these were new companies. It's the same companies today who are doing these AI things, which is part of what makes it a little bit less exciting. So you have Gmail launched 20 years ago, and here's Google. They're just putting AI tools in Gmail. That seems a lot less exciting. So
I can't do that. Please turn on Wi-Fi and try
hey,
again.
So I triggered my Google talking. I don't know if you could hear that or not. So that is what I wanted to talk about AI, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. But the other trend we're talking about, and this is not totally unrelated to all this AI stuff, is this idea that creators, writers, journalists should be building their own fan communities. We're talking about paid newsletters, we're talking about private communities. It's definitely an ongoing trend, and I think it's really interesting because here you have this sort of influential article. This is from the CEO of Patreon, talking about the death of the follower and rise of the real fan. If you go to platforms that are mostly algorithmic, like TikTok and a lot of you see on Instagram and even the YouTube Shorts feed and so forth, people consume a lot of content, but it's this algorithmic feed, and they don't really necessarily care about who's giving it. So people may give a follow, but they're not necessarily consuming everything that you post. They're probably not even a true fan. They just go back to the algorithmic feed and see what interests them there. So it's pretty fickle. And on top of that, for people who are relying on advertising revenue, that can be really unpredictable. It fluctuates up and down a lot. YouTube has a good advertising revenue share if you're in the YouTube partner program, but if you've been in it a while, again, it goes up and down, and that really depends on what the advertisers are spending. You have platforms like X and also like Facebook and I think Instagram too, where if you're a creator, you're in their creator program, you're not getting an ad revenue share. You instead get paid based on the engagement on your content. And I think that really encourages the kind of content that gets a lot of engagement, things that rile people up or piss people off, also things that make people excited. But I think it's not a great trend. And the idea is that you can get a group of true fans and they can basically support you on Patreon, or they can subscribe to your newsletter or become a member on YouTube and all that. And those are your true fans and you build that community. Oh, Eileen says, Jack Conti is who said this. And thank you. Totally. I think I maybe my memory is going. But this was a big talk. And so really, this is what people are doing. They're trying to build their fan base. They're trying to get paid members, paid subscribers. And you talk about Substack, they're trying to attract YouTube creators. Come here, build your community here, get paid here. And Substack, they started out as a newsletter platform. They still have newsletters, but they're really going all in on these communities where they have things, not just posts, they have like a Twitter-like feed, but there's chat and you can upload videos, you can live stream on Substack. They want to basically get people to build their community there. And we also have YouTube communities. This is on the community tab, which hasn't really been very community-like, where you can have member-specific content, or you can have a mixture of free and paid people posting. I think this is what a lot of creators are going to focus on. But I think the thing that I don't know, and I know people are talking about this a lot, is you can offer these memberships and subscriptions. Oh, it's $2 a month, $5 a month. And that's really reasonable. But for viewers, how many $5 a month subscriptions are you actually going to pay for? Especially when people are on different platforms. And so I think this is an issue that hasn't been resolved, where I don't know if people have sort of hit the limit yet, but I think it's going to be difficult. And I suspect what we're going to be seeing eventually is people grouping together, and you pay one fee for multiple creators. It's sort of one of these things. People become independent, then they group together, independent, group together. So we'll see how that works. All right, so all right. the next slide. So I have notes, and for some reason I didn't write any notes on this slide. But this is a symbol of the Fediverse. I added the little icons, not so much just the Fediverse, but what they're calling the open social web. So this is the exact opposite to people having an individual newsletter or Patreon or whatever. Instead, the idea is that you create your social media profile on whichever platform suits you the best. Is it Blue Sky? Is it Threads? Is it Mastodon? Is it something else? And then you can follow people on other platforms. They can follow you back. You can comment. So right now, Threads is still gradually rolling out Federation activity pub, so like with Mastodon. But the idea is that someone on Mastodon can follow me on Threads, and they can comment on my posts and reshare them and so forth. And then I, on Threads, can follow people who are on Mastodon, and I don't have to have profiles in both places. Blue Sky, which is even a year ago, wasn't even open to the public yet, but is having a huge surge now. It's also part of the open social web. It's not on the same protocol as ActivityPub, Threads, Mastodon, but there are ways to bridge those. And again, the idea is also you have your profile on the platform you like, but if you want to move, you can do it, and you can take your followers and the people you're following with you wherever you move. So you're not locked into a particular platform. And again, this is exciting. This is really getting some traction, especially as X has become more of a walled garden and focusing on people who pay for X. And a lot of that is actually hidden where you can't see it unless you're signed into an account. Instagram, you have to be signed into account. LinkedIn, you have to be signed into account. So these are really kind of private walled gardens. And this is the opposite of that. This is open, this is public, and you let you network across different platforms, which is pretty exciting. I think the big question that needs to be answered, though, is how is this funded? It always comes down to money, right? Blue Sky needs to have funding somehow. The question is, do they stick in ads? If you have ads, how does that work when you're federating across different platforms? Or do you have paid subscriptions of some sort for premium features? But those features are, again, going to be specific to that platform. So that is an open question. And then for people who create, people who actually add value by posting on these platforms, is there a way for them to monetize? There's been attempts to have a way to make paid following on ActivityPub on Mastodon. That hasn't really caught on. I kind of feel like it's against the vibe there. It's interesting, on Threads, you have a lot of influencers. I kind of hate the term influencers, people who monetize their content. Less so on Blue Sky. The vibe is just totally different. But again, in the long term, it's not clear what's going to happen. That's something that I think is going to be grappled with over the course of the next year. Craig says, I don't want to pay for X. I hope you're not paying for it if you don't want to pay for it. I mostly have stopped posting on X except for a few announcements. It's just not an interesting place for me. It wasn't showing me content I was interested in, and I don't really like the management there. So I'm mostly on Blue Sky and Threads. If you're there, I hope you connect with me. If you look at my update, there should be a link to my profiles there. I think maybe they own my channel too, although I may have to update that. with Blue Sky. I have all these things at the end of the year. It's like, oh, double check to make sure I have everything updated. Too many things. All right. So just a couple more changes beyond social media. Well, this is actually related to social media. Platforms are still going all in on video for phones. So this is mostly shorter vertical video, but like YouTube, they've expanded to 3 minutes. I think TikTok, you can post up to 10 minutes. So it's not necessarily super short videos, but they are vertical. They are meant for people who are watching on their mobile device. But you also see it on platforms like LinkedIn, which is kind of a little surprising to me. I just visualize people going to LinkedIn on their laptop or desktop computer when they're at work. Maybe not. So we're seeing more of this. And the big elephant in the room is what's going to happen to TikTok in the US. In theory, it could be banned in the US January 19th. Will this actually happen? Will someone intervene? Will Congress intervene? Will President Trump intervene? We don't know. It's really up in the air, and it's not great for people who create videos on TikTok to have it kind of open because there really isn't an equivalent platform. It kind of makes sense, right? YouTube is not the same. Instagram Reels are not the same. They're all their own thing. So we'll see how that works. But I think we'll see that people are looking to these other platforms, and the platforms obviously know this. So maybe we'll see more features to encourage that. So it's on the small screen people are watching. And then the exact opposite of that is that YouTube has really been going all in on the big screen, not the movie theater screen, but talking about TV in people's living rooms. I see Eileen says she's watching using her Chromecast. Tons of people apparently watch YouTube on TV, a lot of times more YouTube than Netflix or other streaming platforms. And YouTube is leaning into this. They are suggesting people post videos at 4K resolution, which not everyone necessarily has the equipment. You can't do that with a live stream, at least not this live streaming platform. And they redesigned the channel layouts to make them better for people watching on TVs. I think that this is really going to be interesting in 2025, especially YouTube is doing this for sports events, but for other things too. I think there's this tension, right? If you create videos, you create it for the small screen, vertical, or for the high resolution big screen. Maybe you do both. So those are the things to watch in 2025. I think it's definitely going to be interesting times. I say that every year, but this year especially, we'll see how things go. And yeah, one thing you talk about watching YouTube videos more, for my mom, she watches some TV. It can be hard to find things on TV to watch those. So my brother and I made a shared YouTube playlist. And any videos we see, we think my mom would be interested in, we add to that, and then she can watch that playlist on TV. It's really great. So that is not a surprising trend. I kind of feel like a lot of times people talk about trends and I'm not actually feeling them myself, but in this case, definitely I do. Although one thing that makes me feel totally middle-aged is that I read, oh, here's the top creators on YouTube, here's the top creators on TikTok. I have no idea who these people are, obviously. I read an article, oh, these well-known creators, YouTubers did this thing. I'm like, I have no idea who these people are. But it's interesting because these platforms are so massive now. I could spend all day, every day watching videos, and it's going to be different videos than what any of you watch. There's just so much. There's more than any one person can watch. So I think that it'll be interesting. The other trend I didn't talk about, I didn't write about because I'm not that involved in it, and maybe Eileen can say something, but shopping. Yeah, live shopping, sort of like Home Shopping Network, but for individual creators. It's massive, massive on TikTok. YouTube has a lot of those tools too. Other platforms are doing it. I think that that is also another way to monetize, especially with affiliate products. So the creator gets a cut of the revenue there. I think that we'll see more of that in 2025 as well. So communities shopping other forms of fan funding rather than advertising revenue is what the big trend is. So those are my trends for 2024. Next week, I'll be back with some more traditional updates. I think I'll talk about specific updates in 2024 from like YouTube, my favorite ones, but I thought this week have it more open-ended. I also wanted to suggest that if you're thinking about doing your New Year's resolutions, I have a short on my channel. You can find it on the Shorts tab, where it's my commitment for 2025. If you look at that on your phone, tap the Add Yours option, and that will let you create or upload a video where you add your own resolution. Then all of those videos that tap the sticker, they're all on one page, so you can see everybody else's resolutions as well. Oh, Eileen says, Amazon and TikTok are great for live shopping, and YouTube needs to catch up. Yeah, I feel like it's not YouTube's focus. I mean, obviously for Amazon, it makes sense that they're good at it. They are a shopping platform to start with, and TikTok has really done that. I think part of it is that in China, online shopping is huge, and ByteDance, the parent company, the Chinese version of the app, they have tons of shopping there. They have a lot of experience there. They really know how to do that. And yeah, so YouTube doesn't have as many tools. They did introduce some things like an extension you can install when you're browsing the web to add products if you're making shopping videos, but it probably has a long way to go. So those are the updates for this week, and I really, whoops, I'm just scattered today. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate all of you. I wouldn't want to do this if nobody ever showed up. And I appreciate you reading and commenting and chatting here. It makes it all worthwhile. I'll mention that if you have comments or questions, you can leave them in the comments of the video. There's also a link to my newsletter, which you should totally subscribe to get all the updates and tips in the inbox every Saturday. And I will see you all next Sunday. Have a fabulous New Year's.